Naoya Inoue, known around the boxing world as the Monster, has built a reputation as one of the most destructive fighters of his generation. His rise to greatness was not simply the result of skill, but a blend of ferocity, precision, and an unshakable will to dominate. Over the years, he has humbled many opponents, breaking their confidence and stripping away their aura of invincibility. But among all his fights, there are a few that stand out as defining moments, not only for the belts he collected, but also for the way he dismantled men who believed they could challenge him. His clashes with Emanuel Rodriguez and Nonito Donaire form the heart of this tale, with one bout ending in swift brutality and another turning into an unforgettable war that tested every fiber of his being. When Naoya Inoue stepped into the ring against Puerto Rican champion Emanuel Rodriguez in May of 2019, it was more than just another fight. This was the semi-final of the prestigious World Boxing Super Series, with the IBF Bantamweight title on the line. It carried with it not only the promise of further glory but also a deeply personal edge. In the days before the fight, Rodriguez's coach had physically shoved Inoue's father in an act that was interpreted as pure disrespect. For a fighter like Inoue, who holds his family in the highest regard, that gesture turned the upcoming bout into something far beyond a championship contest. He was not only fighting to unify belts but also to defend his father's honor, and when a man like Inoue fights with such motivation, the results are bound to be terrifying. Rodriguez entered the fight undefeated and confident. His resume was polished, his boxing skills proven, and his reputation as a technically sound champion made him a dangerous test for anyone. He had slick footwork, quick counters, and an ability to make opponents miss while landing clean shots of his own. Many in Puerto Rico believed Rodriguez could neutralize Inoue's strengths. His record showed why. Not only was he undefeated, but his knockout ratio was impressive, and he had dispatched most opponents with methodical precision. On paper, this was supposed to be one of Inoue's toughest challenges. When the opening bell rang, Rodriguez looked sharp and composed. He circled the ring intelligently, sidestepping Inoue's famous left hooks and finding ways to sneak in jabs and short combinations. For a moment, it looked as though he could drag the Japanese phenom into uncomfortable territory. The first round was a tense chess match. Inoue stalked forward with menace, looking for openings, while Rodriguez boxed smartly off the back foot, refusing to be intimidated. Heavy shots were exchanged early, and Rodriguez showed grit by standing his ground and firing back rather than folding. The Puerto Rican champion was determined to prove he was not just a stepping stone in Inoue's journey. But in boxing, moments of promise can vanish in an instant, and by the second round, reality struck Rodriguez with devastating clarity. Less than 30 seconds into that round, Inoue unleashed a short, lightning-fast left hook that detonated on Rodriguez's chin. The Puerto Rican collapsed to the canvas, stunned, his face betraying the realization that he was in the ring with someone operating on an entirely different level. He rose at the count of 8, wobbling but determined to continue, his courage refusing to let him surrender. Inoue, sensing blood, pressed forward without mercy. He ripped a brutal body shot through Rodriguez's guard, a perfectly timed punch that folded him in half and left him gasping for air on the canvas again. Blood streamed from his nose as he tried to gather himself, his legs unsteady, but once more he rose, embodying the spirit of a true warrior. Yet bravery can sometimes be a curse in the face of merciless precision. Inoue stalked him down again, landing combinations with frightening accuracy, until a thunderous right hand sent Rodriguez crashing down for a third time. The referee had seen enough and waved the contest off in just 2 rounds. Emanuel Rodriguez had gone from undefeated world champion with a solid game plan to a man utterly broken by the sheer force of Inoue's will and fists. It was not simply a victory, it was a public dismantling. With this win, Inoue didn't just collect another belt, he made a statement to the boxing world. It did not matter how talented, polished, or undefeated his opponents were, stand in front of him for too long, and you would not last. The boxing world took notice, but one man in particular felt personally called to answer the challenge: Nonito Donaire. A veteran with over 40 fights and a former multi-division world champion, the Filipino Flash was not intimidated by Inouye's growing legend. Where others saw an unstoppable monster, Donaire saw an opportunity to prove that experience, resilience, and timing could overcome youth and power. Thus, the final of the World Boxing Super Series was set: Naoya Inoue against Nonito Donaire, a clash of generations, a meeting of two warriors who represented the very best of their respective eras. Many assumed this would be another routine demolition for Inoue. Donaire, though respected, was seen by some as past his prime. At 36 years old, with a long career behind him, he was expected to be no match for the ferocity and precision of a younger champion in his prime. Some even predicted the fight would be over within a few rounds, another highlight reel finish to bolster Inouye's myth. But what unfolded was one of the most unforgettable wars in modern boxing. From the opening bell, Inoue fought with his usual intensity. His jabs snapped like a whip, his combinations were sharp, and his movement kept Donaire on the defensive. The Japanese champion controlled the distance, feinted cleverly, and looked poised to overwhelm his older opponent. Most fighters would have crumbled under such pressure. But Donaire was not most fighters. He was a veteran with granite in his chin and fire in his heart. He absorbed Inouye's shots and responded with counters that reminded the world of his pedigree. The second round marked the turning point of the fight. Donaire landed a thunderous left hook that cracked Inouye's right eye socket. Almost instantly, blood began to swell around Inouye's eye. For the first time in his career, the monster looked human. The crowd gasped, commentators erupted, and for a fleeting moment, the question was asked: had Donaire found the key to taming the beast? Inoue blinked through the blood, shook his head, and pressed forward. But this was no longer the effortless dominance fans were used to seeing. Donaire had drawn him into a firefight, and the veteran's experience showed. In round after round, the Filipino legend landed sharp counters and combinations that tested Inouye's defense. The fight turned into a brutal chess match fought at lightning speed. Inouye's relentless pressure was met with Donaire's masterful timing. Each man pushed the other to their absolute limit. By the fifth round, Inoue found his rhythm again, unleashing a stinging left hook followed by a massive right that staggered Donaire. The momentum tilted in his favor, yet Donaire refused to back down. Even when battered, he struck back with counters that reminded Inoue he could not afford a single mistake. The fight became a test of not only skill but also willpower, courage, and heart. Blood streamed from Inouye's eye, his face marked with the toll of war, yet he pressed forward with relentless determination. The eighth round saw Inoue fighting like a wounded animal, ferocious and dangerous, even as blood poured from his eye and nose. Donaire's own face bore the marks of battle, but his spirit burned brightly. It was no longer a question of belts or tournaments. This was a fight for pride, for legacy, for the respect of everyone watching. By the 10th round, Inoue began to press with even greater urgency. Every punch carried not just power but the weight of his determination to prove he could endure adversity. He attacked as though carrying a personal vendetta, landing combinations with brutal precision. Donaire, battered and slower, still refused to fold. His courage became the stuff of legend, and in the 11th round, Inoue landed a shot that would have ended the night for almost any other fighter, a perfectly timed left hook to the liver. Donaire crumpled in agony, his body betraying him, but somehow, through sheer will, he rose again. That moment cemented Donaire's status as one of boxing's toughest warriors. Few men could take such a shot and continue fighting. Even Inoue, for all his ferocity, seemed to acknowledge his opponent's unbreakable heart. The 12th round was fought with desperation and determination. Donaire swung for a miracle, hoping to land a final blow that could change everything. Inoue, one eye nearly shut, pressed forward with focus, determined to close the show. When the final bell rang, both men embraced, no longer merely opponents but warriors who had pushed each other to the very brink. Inoue had his hand raised as the winner, claiming the World Boxing Super Series title, but the story belonged to both men. Donaire, despite the loss, earned renewed respect from the boxing world. Together, they had delivered one of the greatest modern spectacles, a 12-round war that reminded fans why boxing is called the sweet science. The legacy of that fight was monumental. For Inoue, it proved he was more than just a destroyer. He could bleed, suffer, and still triumph against one of the craftiest veterans alive. For Donaire, it showed that courage, experience, and heart could still stand tall against the most fearsome of opponents. Fans clamored for a rematch, and 3 years later, they would get one in June 2022. Inoue and Donaire stepped into the ring again, this time in a unification bout for the WBA, IBF, and WBC bantamweight titles. Expectations were high. Many believed they would produce another grueling, back-and-forth war like the first fight. But this time, Inoue had no interest in drama.